Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to today's class. Uh, so today we are continuing with the UPSc Cse Environment and Ecology series, and this is lecture number 17. Okay, so it's been a long uh, lecture series, but there will be a few more classes, maybe I think 3 or 4 more classes, and it will be over. Okay, so today it's gonna be a topic that is based on government schemes and all. How is India's reaction or India's commitment into the climate change issues? So that is what we are going to look in today's class. Slightly boring topic in the sense that it's too much theory, and it's more about government initiatives and steps taken by the government in order to mitigate and prevent negative impacts of climate change. Okay, so in that sense, it's a bit dry area, but I hope But these are very important in your exam point of view, so you have to study it anyway. And I would suggest you read on these topics on your own also, because this is not an exhaustive list. I'll be taking you through some of the important initiatives and steps taken by the government, but that's not the full, the whole thing of it. There are more initiatives, there are more schemes, etc., etc. So you will have to, append all that with your current affairs. In current affairs, look into the new schemes and all, study the budget, look into the economic survey, etc., etc. You can have a lot of points from all these areas. Okay, so whatever I'm going to teach you today, please Google that same thing and go to their website and look into their missions and objectives, etc., etc. I have listed a few of all such missions and objectives within each of them, but that's not a full list. Okay, there are a lot more to it. Go and read it when you get time. And yeah, with that, let's start today's session. And welcome to Madhav Sankar classes. Please do make sure to subscribe to this channel as well as like and share this video with your friends. Okay, so India and climate change, that is the chapter we are going to deal with today. So after this chapter, tomorrow we will be looking into a very lengthy topic that's on international, commitments on climate change, which includes a lot of international organizations and all. Probably very long chapter and will take more time than usual. Maybe that tomorrow's class will go on for an hour, extra half an hour or something like that. But hopefully by the end of this week, we will be able to wrap up both CSAT and environment series. Okay, by December, hopefully by December 26th, maybe anyway, by the end of this year, both the series will be completed. Okay. Anyway, let's begin. First topic today is India's position on climate change. So welcome to the viewers. What exactly is India's position on climate change? That is the first question. Okay, what is our stand on various things regarding climate change? First of all, understand that India is one of the most populous countries in the world. Okay, after China, whom we are going to surpass in a very few years in the future, India has a population that is very huge. And obviously, we have a very huge contribution to the pollution that's happening all across the world. Among the top 10 polluted cities in the world, India holds a lot of positions. Okay, New Delhi being the topmost. So it's nothing to be proud of, but it's a fact. And India has emitted around 2,136.84 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gases in the year 2010. And it's not it's not a 1 year thing. It's happening almost always. Some years it goes very up. Sometimes it's still, pollution is still very much there. And our country's contribution to it is very, very high. All right. And the prime contributor into this is actually our energy sector. India's energy is dependent upon a lot of non-clean fuels. Okay, which includes, say, coal, petroleum products, firewood, etc., etc. We had studied all these things in previous chapters regarding air pollution, water pollution, etc. So please, link all these to that. So in our energy sector, the prime input raw material is coal, correct? Because most of India's electricity is produced by thermal power plants, not hydroelectric, not wind energy, not solar energy. It's thermal, and obviously the input to that is coal, which is an unclean fuel. Clear? So energy sector is the primary contributor to the emissions in India, followed by industrial processes, which contribute around 8%, agriculture and waste sectors contributing 18 and 3% respectively. About 12% of the emissions were offset by carbon sink action of forests and croplands. Clear? Of all the emissions that are made by us, we also are responsible for sequestration of carbon dioxide. Around 12% of emissions were sequestrated because of carbon sink activities of our forest land, cropland, etc., etc. But it's very low. Okay, it's not as much huge as we would like. But having said all these things, one thing to keep in mind is India's per capita GHG emission is actually 1.56 ton carbon dioxide equivalent, which is way less than 1/3 of the world's per capita emissions and far below most of the developed countries. Okay, India as a whole is a huge emitter of all these greenhouse gases. But if you look at per capita emission, what do you mean by per capita? Per capita means per individual. Okay, so per individual emission, as far as India is concerned, is very less. It's actually only 1/3 of the global average. And it's very less than what is being emitted by countries like US or say European nations, etc., etc. Got it? It's actually because of our huge population that the number is very high. Per capita emission is very low. And according to the World Bank study, India will continue to be a low carbon economy. And our primary focus is on adaptation with specific focus on mitigation. Okay, we have to adapt to changing realities, changing climates, and changing circumstances. Also find ways to mitigate various kinds of negative impacts of climate, including natural and other disasters. So for all these things, India has actually unveiled Comprehensive National Action Plan on Climate Change, NAPCC. Okay, that is National Action Plan on Climate Change. We have a system in place like this, and we advocate on using low carbon technology and putting more IPR access for developing countries. Similarly, focusing more into research and development. India as a nation is doing a lot of things in order to reduce the emissions as well as in order to say reduce the effect of global warming that is happening around the world. Okay, so now let's look into what are the observed climate and weather changes in India. I told you that this is India's stand. Okay, so far whatever I have mentioned is India's approach into this topic. Okay, so what are the observed climate and weather changes in India in the past years? Starting with temperature. We have witnessed a temperature increase of 0.4 degrees Celsius over the past century. Okay, so in the past 100 years, temperature has been continuously increasing. We have an increasing trend. But although this trend is visible almost everywhere in India, we have observed a reverse trend in the northwest India and some parts of South India. We have actually witnessed a cooling trend. Okay, second one, rainfall. Just think about it. India is basically a monsoon dependent country. So think about India's monsoon rains in the recent years. It's very much unpredictable these days, correct? It's very much sporadic. I know the pattern is changing continuously. In some areas where there used to be abundance of rain, have a very less amount of rain now. But in certain other areas where there used to be very less rain, we have huge amounts of rain now. So this kind of very say unsettled kind of pattern is being seen as far as rainfall is concerned. Extreme weather events. There are not too much extreme weather events visible in India as of now. We have these occasional tropical cyclones, especially in the eastern coast. But other than that, too much pronounced extreme weather events are not visible in India. Okay. Now, rise in sea level. Yes, Based on the scientific study, we have observed that around 1.06 to 1.75 millimeter rise is happening every year as far as the coast is concerned. India's coastal areas are concerned. And these rates are actually consistent with the 1 to 2 millimeter per year rise in the global scenario. Okay, in a world perspective, the sea level is actually rising between 1 to 2 millimeters. The same is actually visible in India also. Around 1.06 to 1.75 millimeter rise has been seen in the sea level in the coastal regions. Now, Himalayan glaciers. How much has the climate change impacted the Himalayan glaciers? The strategic as well as environmental importance of Himalayas. We have already looked into that in one of our previous chapters. Himalayas are one of the major sources of water as far as the North Indian rivers are concerned. Correct? Because during the rainy season, the monsoon season, the monsoonal rains will provide waters to all these rivers. But during the summer season, when the South Indian rivers goes dry, the North Indian rivers are still water, having filled with water because of the glaciers that melt. Correct. So Himalayan glaciers are very important as far as perennial rivers are concerned. Indus, Ganga, Brahmaputra, so and so. And glacial melt may impact their long-term lean seasonal flow with adverse impacts on the economy. That's true. If the glacial melt is happening at the current rate, or if it starts to accelerate more, what will happen? The glaciers will recede, and a time will come when the North India too will not have any perennial rivers, and that could have severe economic issues in our country, because these rivers are basically the lifelines of North India. Correct? The Indo-Gangetic Plain, the Indus Basin, the Brahmaputra Basin, all these areas are very important for agriculture. Correct? These rivers are the chief means of irrigation there. What happens if these rivers dry up? 60% of Indian population is still very much attached to agriculture and allied activities. So it's their lifeline. So these rivers basically determines or have a huge importance in the economic activity of India, and hence the GDP of India as such. But even then, based on the current values and all, it's too early to establish any long-term trends as far as glaciers are concerned. Still, everything is pretty much intact. We have not seen any clear evolution of patterns as far as impact of climate on these glaciers are concerned. Okay, it's too early to call. I mean, we have to observe and study much more before we can give a very much accurate result. Now, what are the current actions for adaptation and mitigation? In the first slide, I told you that India's response or India's stand on climate change is also focused on adaptation and mitigation. In certain scenarios, we have no choice but to adapt to the different situations, correct? I mean, the temperatures are increasing or the monsoons are becoming very much erratic. In these cases, we can't control climate. Again, at least not in the short term. So we have to adapt to the changing realities. So that is one mechanism. Just consider COVID. COVID-19 has come, the virus has spread everywhere, and now our lifestyle has completely changed. 2 years ago, we were different. We couldn't even think of a world where we are living in today, 2 years ago. Correct? But COVID came, a lot of changes has happened, and now we have started to live in this reality. We have started to adapt into this reality. And there are mitigation measures. We have looked into vaccinations, we have looked into other, all sorts of things. Same thing can be said for environment and ecology also. We have adaptation measures and mitigation measures in place. Okay, so basically these measures are taken to minimize the adverse impacts of climate change. That is the primary focus. Climate change is a real thing. So how can we survive through this? How can we minimize the negative impacts of climate change? So it could be of various methods. In certain cases, it's migration. Okay, say coastal communities are moved into the mainland, or maybe to cope with the sea level and all. In certain cases, from very cold regions, migration happen into other places. In certain other island nations, they migrate to say other. I have already told you the story about Kiribati Island in previous classes, which actually sank because of the rising sea levels. They had to move into a different country, correct? So all these are adaptive measures. The main aim is to minimize the adverse impacts of climate change. Mitigation, on the other hand, comprises measures to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases that cause the climate change in the first place. Okay, so adaptation is basically what comes after the climate change happens. Okay, I mean, as it's happening. But mitigation is trying to prevent this climate change from, getting out of hands. We are trying to reduce the emissions and the pollution, etc., so that severe impacts of this climate change can be nullified, as well as we can say regain some of the say older values which are less polluted. Clear? Now let's look into some specific sectors and how do we deal in these sectors, starting with agriculture. How does the government of India basically deal with adaptation and mitigation as far as agricultural sector is concerned? Two risk financing programs has been implemented. One is the crop insurance scheme. Crop insurance scheme is basically a scheme that provides insurance for the farmers when they have crop loss because of climate related and other issues also, mainly climate related issues. Then you have credit support mechanism. This is basically giving farmers some incentive or credit in advance for, say, buying of seeds or fertilizers or something like that. It's a credit scheme. The first one is an insurance scheme. Okay, these are the governmental policies in agricultural sector. We will look into more in the upcoming slides. Then regarding crop improvement, present programs address measures such as development of arid land crops and pest management, as well as capacity building of extension workers and NGOs to support better vulnerability reducing practices. So in crop improvement, what are the focus areas? Basically trying to develop the arid land crops, etc. Those crops that can be resilient to drought, those crops that can be resilient to other things, say for example waterlogging, okay, or in a flood kind of situation. Those crops that are able to resist pests. Similarly, other better pest management techniques, capacity building for extension workers, NGOs. So these are certain activities that are done in the crop improvements area. Now, drought proofing. You know what drought is. So how do you, or what are the measures taken in the sector of drought proofing? Minimize the adverse effects of drought on the production of crops and livestock, and on productivity of the land, water and human resources, so as to ultimately lead to drought proofing of affected areas. So this is actually the pathway the government of India is taking in these sectors. Forestry. What is the prime goal? Prime goal is to increase the forest cover in India, correct? So strong and rapidly growing forest cover, that afforestation program. That's the primary goal. And for this, a number of other steps has been taken, starting with the Forest Conservation Act, which was passed in the year 1980. So as I have mentioned in the one of the previous slides, although India is a huge emitter of all kinds of pollution, India is also responsible for absorbing a lot of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere because of our forest cover. India is also a very good carbon sink. Okay, thanks to afforestation. We are trying to reduce deforestation as much as possible and trying to bring in more and more area under forest cover. Water. We have a national water policy that stresses that non-conventional methods of utilization of water is necessary. Okay, we have some conventional methods like rainwater harvesting and rooftop harvesting structures, etc., which has been there for a very long time now. But we are also looking into some non-conventional water harvesting technologies, such as inter-basin transfers. You have heard about this, river linking projects and all, correct? So all that comes under this, river inter-basin transfers. Artificial recharge of groundwater. There is natural recharge through rainwater or say river water percolating down into the ground. But in certain cases, that's not happening. So we are manually or artificially making installations into groundwater aquifers. Then desalination of brackish or seawater. Yes, there are areas in the coastal region where because of the rise in sea level, the other water bodies also has started to become salinated. Okay, so these waters cannot be used for any drinking purpose or agriculture purpose, etc., etc. So we have started to work in technologies which can actually desalinate this water and convert brackish water into, say, potable water or drinking water. Okay, so this is another development in the sector of water. Coastal regions, I have already mentioned this. There has been some restrictions that has been imposed in the sea area between 200 meters and 500 meters of the high tide line. There has been construction restrictions are there. Then I think I have mentioned this in previous classes about territorial waters and different kinds of zones associated with the coastal regions and all. So if you don't remember, please watch that again. But in coastal regions also, various steps has been taken in order to make sure that the sensitive ecosystems are safeguarded. Okay, I hope you remember about the marshy areas and all. Correct, the mangrove forests associated with the coastal landscape. All these needs, immediate conservation. So associated steps has been taken by the government of India in order to, with the help of state governments, in order to implement all these things. Regarding health, because of the changing climatic circumstances, a lot of health issues are being reported all across the world. India being a tropical country, we have occurrences of very famous tropical diseases such as malaria, Kala Azar, Japanese encephalitis, filaria, dengue. Correct. We have plenty of evidence, cases with all these diseases. So programs has been implemented in order to contain them, minimize them, eradicate the pests or say pathogens that are spreading them. Okay. Now disaster management. Because of the climate change, plenty of disasters are happening. We have floods. We had floods in Kerala, Assam. We have these tropical cyclones regularly hitting Orissa and Andhra Pradesh. Correct. So disaster management units has been mobilized, and certain areas are evacuated. In certain areas, construction is done according to resist against these disasters, etc., etc. So all kinds of steps are taken in this sector also. All right, now let's look into some major missions of Government of India as far as climate change is concerned. I told you that India has a national action plan on climate change, correct? This national action plan has 8 national missions, which forms the crux of it. Okay, so basically all this plan hinges on development of new technologies, development and use of new technologies. India is very much, pro technology in this sector. Okay, we have regularly asked the developed nations to put in more funds into research and development in areas of clean technology, clean fuel, etc., etc. Okay, so with the help of the community, with local participation, by creating mass awareness, etc., etc., and with proper institutional mechanisms, we are trying to make sure that the pollution or say the carbon dioxide equivalent emissions are contained as much as possible. So starting with missions one by one. First one, National Solar Mission. Okay, the NSM, very famous mission, one of the flagship missions of Government of India, one of the most successful missions of Government of India. Please do read about them. When I go through each of these missions, I am telling you the main points only. There are certain sub points also which could be useful for your prelims. So these points are basically taken from the concerned website, copy pasted basically. So go there and read through the full mission. Every mission has an objective, say aim, and then how it's implemented, and then what are the results. All these are given in the website itself. Okay, so here I have put the important points just to give you a perspective. So National Solar Mission, a very major initiative of Government of India along with state governments to promote ecologically sustainable growth while addressing India's energy security challenge. So this has two approaches. First one is that India, because of the huge population, we are emitting too much carbon dioxide equivalents of greenhouse gases, so we have to reduce it. So on an ecologically sustainable growth point of view, it is very much important. The other view is that we have, due to this huge population, we have severe energy issues also, energy crisis. So we have to have adequate, say, non-exhaustible energy sources. We cannot always depend on coal or petroleum, both of which are exhaustible. Correct. So we have to have other, say, alternate sources of energy. So National Solar Mission serves in two ways. One, reduce the pollution. Two, find alternate energy sources which are inexhaustible. Got it? So the initial idea behind National Solar Mission, or initial goal, was to create framework for the development of 100 megawatts of solar power by 2022. This was the initial point of view. This was set as the aim. But India surpassed this goal way earlier. Okay, we never thought that we would do it, but we did it anyway. Okay, well before the deadline, we surpassed this 100 megawatts of solar power. So the center government revised their targets under the National Solar Mission from 20,000 megawatts to 1 lakh megawatts. Okay, so initially it revised it from 100 megawatts to 20,000 megawatts, which also was achieved. So now the new target is 100,000 megawatts, or 1 million. No, it's 100,000. Sorry, 100,000 megawatts by 2020. Okay, and India is actually on the way of achieving it. And this is actually divided into two parts. Out of this, 100,000 megawatts, 40,000 will be rooftop, and the remaining 60 would be large and medium scale grid connected solar power projects. Rooftop means, in your houses and all, you can install solar panels, etc., etc. Your state government's electricity division will take care of it. There should be programs in all states which does this. In Kerala, KSCB, or the Kerala State Electricity Board has this program where they will install this. If we request it, they will actually install this solar panels on the rooftop, and based on there are certain criteria and conditions. So all states has such plans for harvesting solar energy and approaching this target of 40 gigawatts by the year 2022 from the rooftop section. And from the main national grid section, there is 60 gigawatts. Okay. Now, second one, National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency, NMEEE. Okay, any questions? Hello, Seema, welcome. All right, so as I have mentioned earlier, today is a dry topic. Could be slightly boring. Please bear with me, but this is important anyway. Okay, so as you can't skip it. Also, please do not, as far as these topics are concerned, please do not stick with this class alone. This is a base. Please build on into this using current affairs, etc., etc., because these are very relevant nowadays also. And the UPSC asks these kinds of questions every year. So please append everything that I teach today with the current affairs. And also please, if possible, look into the websites of these missions, which will give you much better in-depth analysis. Okay, because I cannot put everything in the website into a single class, which would take, if I try to, put in every point given in the website, then this class would go on for like hours and hours. I do not intend to do that. I have only put in the very important points. So I suggest you go into these websites and look into the mission objectives and developments, etc. Okay, so second one is the National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency, or the NMEEE. So as the name suggests, the idea is that energy efficiency has to be increased by creating some conducive regulatory and policy regime. Okay, it's not just enough to find alternative sources of energy. It is also important to use this energy in a much more efficient way than what's being done. Correct. So basically, an estimated amount of 74,000 crores. Market-based approach to unlock energy efficiency opportunities, estimated to about 74,000 crores, has been found by Government of India. And by the year 2014-15, annual fuel savings in excess of 23 million tons and cumulative avoided electricity capacity addition of 19,000 megawatts Carbon dioxide emission mitigation of 98 million tons per year. These are the objectives, okay, that were set initially by 2014, 2015. These aims were supposed to be achieved. Okay, and India actually performed very well in all these sectors. Within this NMEEE, 4 new initiatives were also added. First of all, perform, achieve, and trade. Okay, perform, achieve, trade. I hope you remember about the carbon credit system and all, where a company can buy a carbon credit, etc., etc. I have taught that in the previous class. Okay, we can actually exchange it in the stock exchanges also, carbon credits and all. So that is basically based on this one: perform, achieve, and trade. First of all, you perform. Your company should perform well by reducing your own emissions. And when you achieve it, you will get certain carbon credits, and then you can trade these for even better performance. Got it? So that is PAT system, or perform, achieve, trade. Market transformation for energy efficiency. Yes, market transformation in the sense we are putting more focus into, say, cleaner fuels, cleaner technologies, etc., etc. Rather than promoting more polluting cars or, say, automobiles, we are actually putting focus into public transport system. We are putting more focus into electronic vehicles. Correct. Even in those vehicles which are using diesel and petrol, we are actually putting in severe restrictions such as standards such as BS6 or even higher. Okay. Similarly, energy efficiency financing platform. All these needs a lot of research and development. Okay, this efficiency is something very, very, say, sought upon. It cannot happen overnight. So a lot of R&D has to happen first before it can be taken into the market. So you need proper funding platforms. You need proper financing. So there is a platform for that also. Then last one, FEED, that is Framework for Energy Efficiency Economic Development. A holistic framework that looks into all these things. Okay, so these are the new initiatives that were taken under enhanced energy efficiency. Now, National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. I think you might have heard about this. NMSH, National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. So just as the name suggests, the idea is to create a sustainable habitat. Through what? Through improvements in energy efficiency in buildings, urban planning, improved manage of solid and liquid waste, shift towards public transport and conservation through appropriate changes in legal and regulatory framework. Again, this is a holistic development. It cannot happen in one individual sector alone. So you have to have cleaner fuels. You have to have better energy efficiency. You have to deal with proper segregation and proper disposal of wastes, both solid and liquid. Similarly, you have to have a framework for getting the civilians more into using public transports rather than buying their own vehicles. Correct. So all these are the agendas or the main focus in the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. So basically, it tries to improve ability of habitats to adapt to climate change by improving resilience of infrastructure, community-based disaster management, and measures for improving advanced warning systems. Think about it. We have all this in place right now. Correct. We have every state has a disaster management plan, or at least a board or a force to deal with such scenarios. We are trying to improve the resilience of infrastructure. Every building now have a code. Correct. It has to undergo environmental impact assessment before it can be built. Similarly, we have early warning systems as far as say cyclones are concerned, as far as storms are concerned, as far as rains are concerned. Correct. The IMD actually comes up with these kinds of predictions, and they give early warnings to the fishermen that they should not go into the sea because of the wind speed which is higher than something. So all these things are in place, and we are trying to improve upon this. Okay, all this comes under National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. National Water Mission, another one. Again, a very known, a very famous one, National Water Mission, NWM. So what could be the aims of this mission? Ensuring integrated water resource management. That's it. That's the primary thing. integrated water resource management, which means conservation of water is there, minimization of wastage is there, equitable distribution, that's also very much important, both across states and within states. Correct. You have to conserve water. Yes. You have to reduce the wastage. That's also there. And whatever is available has to be equally shared rather than one area possessing everything and the other area left without anything. So all these are taken into concern under the National Water Mission. So a framework has been developed for the optimum water use through increased in water efficiency by 20%. Through all these policies, we are trying to achieve at least an increased efficiency by 20%. Ensuring that a considerable share of water needs of urban areas is met through recycling of wastewater. That is another core area of focus. We can use it's based on the new realities. It is important that we recycle everything that we can. It's not just in water. For say in case of plastics, in case of any material that is recyclable, go for that option. I have taught you about the 4 R's, correct? I hope you remember the 4 R's. So that is applicable in every field of environment and ecology. We have to stop exploiting on our natural resources. We have to reduce the pressure that the natural resources are facing these days. So anything that can be recycled and reused should be recycled and reused. Okay, similarly, meeting the water requirements of coastal cities using desalination technologies. I have already told you regarding the rise in sea level, and because of that, a lot of aquifers in the coastal areas are becoming salinated. So desalination technologies are to be introduced in these areas. Promotion of water neutral and water positive technologies. So water neutral and water positive. What does this mean? Water neutral technologies means it takes in X amount of water, and if it absorbs X amount of water, it gives out X amount of water. So in effect, no water is used or say wasted. That is water neutral. And water positive means it gives out more than it intakes. Okay, so promotion of water neutral and water positive technologies. Consider say agriculture of rice. Okay, rice is a crop that takes in a lot of water. Correct. And India is a major exporter of rice. So by exporting rice, India is actually exporting water. Can we say it like that? Yes, no? Rice is a water intensive crop. You know how rice is cultivated. Water logging is necessary. So by exporting these crops, we are actually indirectly exporting a lot of water. Correct? So if we have better technologies in place, India can actually avoid this, and we can actually utilize this water domestically itself for domestic needs itself. Correct. So such methods are also in our focus. National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem. This is specific to the northeastern and northwestern Himalayas. Okay, it's not implemented throughout India. It's specific to Himalayas, as the name suggests. So basically, the idea is to continuously monitor and assess the Himalayan ecosystem, which is actually very fragile. Okay, and enable policy bodies in their policy formulation functions and assist states in the Indian Himalayan region with their implementation of actions selected for development, sustainable development. There are certain states which comes within the Himalayan belt. These states are given, say, financial incentives and all kinds of support by the central government to make sure that all sustainable projects taken on behalf of the Himalayas and its ecosystem is implemented with maximum efficiency. Okay, so building human and institutional capacities, network knowledge institutions, detect and decouple natural and anthropogenic global environment changes, assess the socio-economic and ecological consequences of global environmental changes, study traditional knowledge systems for community participation. So all these are very, say, general points. Maybe last one is a bit specific. Okay, using traditional knowledge. There we know that, say, based on science and technology, based on advancement in research, etc., etc., we have found out a lot of things. But there are a lot of traditional knowledge that the main world or the mainstream world is unaware of. But these are known to the local communities, the people who have lived there for centuries. So by bringing them on board, we can actually use their traditional knowledge, which actually in many cases are way more efficient than what is being done by, say, other technological approaches. Okay, so this is a holistic approach. By local participation, by mass awareness, by taking into consideration all these things, we are trying to protect the Himalayan ecosystem. National Mission for a Green India. Again, think about it. Look into the name of this project and mission, and from that itself, you know what's going to happen. Make India greener. How? Simple, by increasing the quality of forest cover. That's it. India's forest has to be, the forest cover in India has several issues. Okay, in those areas where we have very huge amount of forests, say huge density of forests, I mean that's good. But in certain, say these are individual clusters. Okay, but in certain other areas we have forests, but it is not as much dense or anything. Say it has become very much thinner. Okay, so in effect the green cover is way low. Say, and in urban areas we do not have any forests at all. That is why government is now trying to bring in the concept of urban forestry, and we have schemes in place that promotes urban forest patches. Correct? You might have heard about that, urban forest patches and all. Many states in India have started this project in main urban areas to act as a sequestration mechanism for pollution, and also to provide a calming environment in that area. Okay, in the form of a park or in the form of a small, say, mini forest, because each forest itself have a miniature or say a microclimate. Correct? I have explained all that in one of our previous classes. So eco-restoration or afforestation of scrub, shifting cultivation areas, cold deserts, mangroves, ravines, in all these areas, eco-restoration process or afforestation process is being undergone. Improvement in forest and tree cover in urban and peri-urban lands. Improvement in forest cover and tree cover on marginal agricultural lands. A lot of land, forest land has been encroached by agriculture. So now we are trying to reverse this. Or even if it's not total reversal is possible, at least increase the forest cover wherever possible. Okay? Management of public forests or non-forest areas by community institutions. That's also important. Public forest or non-forest areas. In these areas also we can, grow trees, etc., and we can actually build a miniature version of a forest by community participation. That is done with the help of various community institutions, NGOs, self-help groups, etc., etc. Adoption of improved fuel wood use efficiency and alternate energy devices by households in project area. Yes, it's not just enough to do afforestation. It is also equally important to reduce the pressure on forest resources by moving into alternate energy devices, which are more cleaner and which does not depend on firewood, which is one of the prime products that we take from forests. Diversification of forest-based livelihoods of about 3 million households living in and around forests. Yes, this is another mechanism. A lot of people actually, make their living using forest resources. So in some cases, this is exploitative. So if you can actually provide them with an alternate method of livelihood, then the pressure on this forest can be reduced to a considerable extent. Okay, so that is another tactics. And in this mission also we have about 5 submissions, and please, when in your own time go through that if you want more information on it. But in general, the National Mission for a Green India focuses on making India greener through afforestation and such adaptive mechanisms. National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, NMSA, very important area. Always in the current affairs section, please do read about this in depth. Okay, we have a lot of submissions that comes under this NMSA project. Plenty of them are there. If I start to take a class on that, we will go on for like 4-5 hours. So please do look into this say I would recommend you downloading some say compilations by some academies on governmental schemes, okay, and find the schemes related with agriculture. There are plenty of them, and most of them comes under NMSA, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. Okay, so basically this mission aims to devise strategic plans at agroclimatic zone level so that action plans are contextualized to the regional scales in the areas of research and development, technology and practices, infrastructure and capacity building. Agriculture is not something that is uniform throughout the country. Correct? Certain crops are associated with certain weather conditions, certain climatic conditions. You can't grow sugar canes on top of mountains. Correct? Similarly, you can't grow palm or say dates in a say in the Indo-Gangetic Valley. So agriculture, the practice, the kind of crops, everything is different in different areas of India. And because India is such a geographically diverse country, it's not possible to put in a one size fits all kind of a picture. Correct? So we have to devise strategic plans based on the region, on regional scales. So to enhance agricultural productivity through customized interventions such as biotechnology, to develop improved varieties of crops and livestock, promoting efficient irrigation systems, demonstration of appropriate technology, capacity building, skill development, all these are important. Okay, we have to shift from a very primitive method of agriculture into using modernized technologies and machineries. Correct. Maximum use of the available land rather than extending or encroaching into forest lands or say new virgin lands. Try to make the most of what is available. Okay. Also, in case of arid and semi-arid lands, we can actually try to bring these wastelands into or convert these wastelands into agricultural lands. Similarly, to facilitate access to information and institutional support by expanding automatic weather station systems to the panchayat level and linking them to existing insurance mechanisms. I hope you have heard about the different insurance associated with agriculture, such as weather-based crop insurance scheme, NAIS scheme. But please remember, this is actually a bit old. NAIS scheme is now under some other scheme. Find it out. Okay, what is NAIS and what is MNAIS, modified NAIS scheme? Both these has been subsumed under a different scheme. Please do read about Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Actually that is where all these have went, and read about the submissions in under that. Okay, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, FPM FBY. This has been a UPSC question in 2016 prelims. Please do look into that. Now, to promote laboratory to land research by creating model villages and model farm units in rain-fed and dry areas, the NMSA has identified 10 key dimensions for adaptations and mitigation. So what are the 10 key areas? Improved crop seeds, water efficiency, pest management, improved farm practices, nutrient management, agricultural insurance, credit support, markets, access to information, and livelihood diversification. So these are the focus areas under NMSA. So again, please, this is a very important mission. Don't skip it. Very dry, too many points, I know, but don't skip it. National Mission on Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change, NMSKCC. So National Mission on Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change. So here, what is the focus area? Formation of knowledge networks. Correct. We have many knowledge existing institutions, but we have to network all these together so that the information produced by each of them can be accessed by all of them, which will considerably help in the R&D mechanism, research and development mechanism. Correct. So we need proper policy framework for that. We need institutional support for that. All these are the focus areas under NMSKCC. Establishment of global technology watch groups with institutional capacities. Similarly, development of national capacity for modeling the regional impact of climate change on different ecological zones within the country. Establishing research networks and encouraging research in the areas of climate change Generation and development of conceptual and knowledge basis for defining sustainability. So basically, the idea is to enhance the knowledge network and to enhance this inter-network, to connect all these together, to form a better knowledge database, and to use all these global technology facilities, etc., into the Indian systems. Still, a huge amount of population in India are very much using primitive technologies, primitive methods, while there are much better, more efficient, more cleaner alternatives are available across the world. Not everything can be adapted to India, but whatever can be adapted into in the Indian system should be adapted, and those other areas where we do not have a suitable technology, in those areas we need more research and development, and newer technologies has to be implemented. So all that comes under NMSKCC. National Bioenergy Mission. So what is bioenergy? Before moving into National Bioenergy Mission, what exactly constitutes bioenergy? Energy produced from biological materials, anything. Okay, from biomass, all comes under bioenergy. So according to the estimates, biomass from agro and agro-industrial residue can potentially generate up to 25,000 megawatts of power. Okay, because India is primarily an agricultural nation, primary sector is still very much influencing our economy. We can also use this agro-industrial residue. Okay, farmers have this practice of burning this agricultural residue before their next crop season, which actually contributes to huge air pollution. This happens especially in states like Haryana. Okay, this is one of the reasons why Delhi is so much polluted. One of the reasons, not the main may not be the main reason, but one of the reasons. So it is important to not only not burn all these residues, but we can actually convert these residues into energy. Okay, so the biomass in India has the potential to provide up to 25,000 megawatts of energy. So why not use it? So what are the sources of this bioenergy? There are both natural and artificial sources. Existing sources is basically leftover organic residue, leftover farm organic residue, leftover forest residue, leftover organic urban residue, algal residue. All these are natural. What about the new sources? Cultivation of short rotation energy crops, social forestry. These are the new innovative mechanisms that are in place as far as bioenergy is concerned. Okay, short-term rotation energy crops, certain crops which are capable of producing more energy compared to other crops. These are rotated with other crops. So we can convert, produce more energy from biomass. Similarly, social forestry. We do not have to, go into forests for procuring biomass. It is possible to do this within community, within urban area, within, say, rural setup itself, by the concept of social forestry. And from here also we can amass a lot of biomass and convert them into energy. What are the advantages in this energy? What are the advantages of bioenergy? Capital efficient. Yes, we are basically using what is the leftover of something else. We are basically using the waste and we are converting waste into energy. Correct? So that is capital efficient. High energy generation potential. Yeah, around 25,000 megawatts of energy could be produced from India's biomass. So a very high generation potential. Significant carbon emission reduction potential. If you are not converting this into energy, what are you going to do with this? Burn it. Correct? We dispose this off in some way or another, which is currently one of the major cause of pollution. So if you can convert this into energy using proper technologies, then significant carbon emission reduction can be achieved. Substantial employment and income generation potential. Yes. These are the new avenues of job creation. Correct. We might think that automation and bringing in new technologies means loss of jobs for a lot of people. Yes, that is true. New automation or adoption of new technologies could actually destroy a lot of jobs, but this actually creates new avenues of jobs. Got it? So new jobs are being created, but they are different from what was existing. So people has to be made aware that these technologies are good for us. They have to be made aware of the potential job opportunities that these technologies provide rather than destroy. Think about computer. Before the arrival of computer, there used to be a position called typer. Correct. You have this typewriter in offices, and also anything that has to be printed is printed using typewriters. Correct. So when the computers came, how much did it change? That typist position is gone. It's no more seen anywhere in India. But computers have provided millions of jobs in India. Correct. So technology has both sides, some boon and some bane. But if the boons can be more than banes, then that technology should be adopted. Correct. So substantial employment and income generation opportunities. Then investments and benefits remain within the country. Yeah. Whatever is invested and whatever is the income generated, all that stays within India. It doesn't go out. Sizable economic value added to GDP. Yes. Wasteland regeneration. Also correct. So all these are the advantages of bioenergy. Okay. So this comes under the National Bioenergy Mission. What is INDC? Any questions? No. Okay. So continuing, what is INDC? You might have heard about this particular abbreviation in the newspapers, and you still hear about this in the current affairs section. Conference of Parties, or COP, of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that is UNFCCC, at its 19th session held in Warsaw in the year 2013, invited all the parties to initiate domestic preparations for their INDC towards achieving the objective of the convention. So INDC means intended nationally determined contributions. Climate change is happening. It's real. There is no it's not a fantasy. It's reality. So every nation has to contribute to prevent this climate change. Okay, every nation has to contribute to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. So rather than putting obligatory mechanisms, INDC is basically an intended nationally determined contribution. That country itself can decide what is going to be its contribution in this framework, and they can come up with their own contributions. Okay, UNFCCC does not impose any contribution or impose any restriction into any country. Rather, the country themselves come out with their own plans and action frameworks. Okay, so the idea started in COP 19, the 19th session in Warsaw, in November 2013. Okay, so the concept of nationally determined contributions, taking into account the outcomes of both Warsaw, that is COP 19, and COP 20, Lima, okay, which happened in 2014. After that, the very famous Paris Climate Conference happened, 2015, that is COP 21. All right, please study the different COPs, COP 19, 20, 21. Then late after that, we have Marrakesh. Very recently, we had Glasgow. Okay, do look into all that. So it was determined that these nationally determined contributions, or the INDC, should have two important criteria. One is reflect the principles of equity and common but differentiated responsibility. Everybody should have their role to play. Everybody has their role to play. But not every roles are the same. Okay? So it should be a common but differentiated responsibilities. So what does this mean? Say, consider Western countries, which are very much industrialized and developed and all. Correct? And Asian countries are still developing, and say some are even underdeveloped. African countries also, same thing. So the global climate is as such today because of all the emissions that these already developed nations did in the previous century. Correct. Industrialization happened in those countries first, and during their industrialization, a lot of emissions has been put into the atmosphere. So they benefited and became developed because of these pollutions that they made in the earlier centuries. But now, the developing countries which are becoming industrialized, if restrictions are put on them, what will happen? There will be this huge disparity in the world. The developed will be developed and the developing will be still underdeveloped. Correct. So these developing and underdeveloped countries should be allowed some flexibility in giving out emissions, and the developed countries should take more responsibility in reducing their emissions. So all have this common agenda, but the contribution is differentiated. Okay, that is what's known as common but differentiated responsibilities. Then the country's contributions must be seen in a balanced and comprehensive context. So India, we had our INDC. India declared a voluntary goal of reducing the emissions intensity of its GDP by 20 to 25% over 2005 levels by 2020, despite having no binding mitigation obligations as per the convention. Okay, this was a voluntary contribution. As I have mentioned, this is nothing obligatory. So India voluntarily, declared that we will reduce our emissions by 20 to 25% of our GDP over by 2005 by 2020. Okay, based on the 2005 levels, by 2020 we will reduce by 20 to 25%. United Nations Environment Program UNEP in its emission gap report 2014 has recognized India as one of the countries on the course to achieving this voluntary goal. That's a positive for India. Okay, may all the countries have, all the parties to this convention has come up with their own INDCs, but a lot of them are not going to achieve it. They are not on their way to achieve it. They are going to default it. But according to the UNEP report in 2014, India is one of the countries who are actually going to achieve this INDC. Okay, but the thing is, this is not enough. In a global perspective, in the current climate change circumstances, we need to do more, much more than this. INDC of India is not enough. Got it? Not just India. Nobody's INDC is enough. Everybody has to do much better if we are supposed to save this or protect this planet. So the INDC proposals are on the following: sustainable lifestyles, cleaner economic development, reduction emission intensity of GDP, etc., etc. You can read through that. Okay, these are the focus areas within INDC. So INDC, in INDC, the country has focused on adaptation efforts, including the following. So the first one here, these are the general ones, okay? In a global perspective, these are the general ones, and these are India's, India's specific adaptation efforts. The areas in which we are contributing. Okay, so what is India's intended nationally determined contribution? What is India's INDC? We already established that India is in line to achieve the INDC, but what exactly did India promise? Apart from that reduction about 20 to 25% emissions of GDP on GDP levels. First of all, at a glance, India has submitted its INDC to the UN framework with the following points: to put forward and further propagate a healthy and sustainable way of living based on traditions and values of conservation and moderation. Adopt a climate-friendly and cleaner path than the one followed so far. Reduce the emissions intensity of its GDP by 30 to 35% by 2030 from the 2005 levels. Okay, the initial declaration was by 2020 we would reduce by 20 to 25% from the 2005 levels. Now we have revised it and we have said that by 2030 we would reduce it by 30 to 35% of what it has been in 2005. Achieve 40% cumulative electric power installation capacity from non-fossil fuel-based energy resources by 2030. Okay, by 2030, 40% cumulative electric power installed capacity would be there from non-fossil fuel-based energy, which means solar. It could be solar, it could be wind energy, it could be tidal energy, etc., etc. It could be hydroelectric. Okay, with the help of transfer of technology and low-cost international finance, including Green Climate Fund. India cannot do all this by itself. We need proper funding and proper technology assistance. And the developed countries are supposed to provide us with all these things. Okay, in the COP21, in the Paris Climate Conference, one of the things that was proposed was the developed countries should contribute a total fund of $100 billion for improving the energy efficiency capacity, etc., of developing and underdeveloped countries. This is yet to be materialized. Okay, why? Because first of all, USA withdrew from the Paris conference while Donald Trump was the president, and now the current president is trying to put it back. Correct. So a lot of issues has happened, in this area because of not just economically, not just ecologically or environmental causes, but also political, economic, and such other issues. Okay, to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide. Yes, how? Through additional forest cover, urban forest patches, afforestation, etc., etc. So these are the INDC as far as India is concerned. Indian Network on Climate Change Assessment. Okay, so this is again some sub-programs launched in India into achieving all these things. So Indian Network on Climate Change Assessment. This was launched in the year 2009 by Ministry of Environment and Forests. The idea was to promote domestic research on climate change and build on the country's climate change expertise. I told you a lot of research has to happen in this area for a proper shift. Correct? So this program intended to do that. So a network-based program of MOEF consisting of 120 institutions, over 250 scientists, etc., were put into action, and this brought in a more science-based policy making based on measurements, monitoring, modeling, etc., etc. So basically, it's conceptualized as a network-based scientific program designed to address and assess the drivers and implications of climate change through scientific research. Okay, this is an intellectual area. We are trying to mitigate the impacts of climate change through scientific research. Okay, so reports prepared by this INCCA will form a part of India's India's national communication, NATCOM, to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. We will study what is NATCOM in the upcoming slide. Okay, so the report provided by this INCCA will be a part of NATCOM that is provided by India to the UNFCCC. Okay, so what is NATCOM? What is national communication? In pursuance of the implementation of the provisions of the convention, India's initial national communication to the UNFCCC has been initiated in 2002, funded by Global Environmental Facility under its enabling activities provided through the United Nations Development Program in New Delhi. So basically, this is a communication mechanism, it's a national communication NATCOM, whereby, a program that is being funded by the Global Environmental Facility, which tries to achieve all the, provisions as per the convention. So the national communication process envisages comprehensive scientific and technical exercises for preparation of inventories of greenhouse gases of anthropogenic origin, reduction of uncertainties in these estimations, and vulnerability assessment and adaptation due to climate change, and other related areas. These are the focus areas. So towards preparation of national communication, a broad participatory approach involving research institutions, technical institutions, universities, governmental departments, etc. has been created by Government of India. Okay, so we have a wide efficient system in place for the NATCOM, and through NATCOM we make things happen based on the Global Environmental Facility, using the funds provided by the Global Environmental Facility, and using this team of persons and institutions in India, we try to achieve the different goals we have committed as per the convention. And the implementation agency is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Okay, India's policy structure relevant to GHG mitigation. We have a couple of, not just a couple, but two major policies as far as GHG mitigation is concerned. First of all, integrated energy policy. Just as the name suggests, it is a comprehensive policy that deals with energy. Okay, it has regulatory legislative and policy backing, and this was adopted in the year 2006. Okay, integrated energy policy came in the year 2006. So what does this aim? This aims at promotion of energy efficiency in all sectors, emphasis on mass transport, renewables including biofuel plantations, accelerated development of nuclear and hydro energy for clean energy, focus on R&D. So basically anything and everything that you can think about in the energy sector, integrated energy policy. Rural electrification policy 2006. This is much more well known to us. Why? Because there were plenty of programs here which imparted clean fuel to the rural sector, including the solar power plants. So promoting renewable energy technologies where grid connectivity is not possible. Okay, I mean, we have a national electricity grid. Correct, we have a national power grid. But this is not connected to every nook and corner of India. There are rural areas where this connection is not possible. There are isolated pockets where this connection, may not be feasible. Okay, so in these areas, certain in these clusters, some alternate methods of power has been implemented, which predominantly is in the solar field or in the using the wind energy. Okay, so this the rural electrification policy of 2006 deals with all these things. The National Environmental Policy 2006 and the notification on the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment 2006, all these also makes a lot of things mandatory, makes it mandatory for conducting this EIA wherever constructions are taken place based on certain criteria. Similarly, Electricity Act of 2005, Tariff Policy 2003, Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board Act 2006. All these looks into major policy decisions and legislative decisions based on GHG mitigation. Okay, don't get confused. I know that this is a lot of points. This is a lot of things to, you might feel saturated at this point. You might feel bored. That's very common. Okay, because as I mentioned, this is a very dry topic. But say in your own time, I'm not asking you to sit through this class throughout. Maybe you can take a break now, go fresh out and come back and watch the remaining video whenever you are ready for it. Okay, I mean the environment lectures would end in like 4 or 5 classes. That's maximum 4 or 5 classes will be there. By that we will finish this series, both environment as well as CSAT. So you have all the time in the world to come back and study all these things. Take this as a guidance. Okay, take this as a pointer. That's it. You you have to put in your own efforts to find out deeper points regarding these topics and build on it. Okay, moving on. Introduction of labeling program for appliances. This is another thing that India did as far as electronic items are concerned. You have heard about this Bureau of Energy Efficiency, correct? BEE is the agency that is behind this. Star labeling. Okay, you have heard the advertisements of ACs and say washing machines and say fridges and all, correct? These are 5-star fridges or say 5-star air conditioners, 6-star air conditioners. Okay, sometimes even that is being advertised these days. So based on the star rating, you can know how much energy is being consumed by this appliance. So the users can take a very much well-informed choice while they buy these products. Okay, this started with fluorescent tube lights, then air conditioners, refrigerators, distribution transformers, etc., etc. More and more products are being pulled into this sector. Energy efficiency marking, the star-based labeling. Okay, now energy conservation building code. This is something that we already discussed in one of our previous chapters. So this program was launched in May 2007. The idea is, when you design a large commercial building, it should be in such a way that the design is very much energy efficient. The building has to satisfy certain energy codes. Okay, especially as far as mass buildings are concerned. Very recently, this Lulu Mall, okay, Asia's largest shopping mall, has been opened in Trivandrum, like 3 or 4 days ago. Okay, so a huge part of its energy is being supplied through solar panels. alternate, say, cleaner source of fuels. Similarly, the another example from Kerala is the Cochin International Airport, CIAL. You might have heard of it, CIAL, Cochin International Airport Limited. That entire facility actually runs with the solar panels. Okay, completely off. It's not using other power. It's fully based on solar energy. As it's a self-efficient building as such. We can call it like that in a way. Okay, so such examples are promoted, and government is trying to implement this building code strictly in almost all the major buildings. Okay, based on certain criteria and conditions. Now, this code also has been incorporated with EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment Requirements. I have talked to you in depth about EIA in one of the previous classes. I hope you remember. In that, energy efficiency and green building code is also a very important area. What are green buildings exactly? Green building is the essence of which would be to address all the pollution related issues of a building in the integrated and scientific manner. A green building depletes as little as that of the natural resources during its construction and operation. That is the idea. A building that minimizes the pollution, a building that minimizes the exploitation of natural resources, that building is known as a green building in layman's terms. So the aim of designing such buildings are as follows: minimize the demand of non-renewable resources and maximize the utilization of energy. Maximize the reuse and recycling of available resources. Utilization of renewable resources. It costs a little more to design and construct a green building. That's an extra point. That's true. Okay, I mean, the cost would be slightly higher than a conventional building, but on an environmental perspective, that building is much more sustainable than anything else. Okay, this question can actually be connected with history also. I think I have seen such questions. I don't remember the exact question, but say, for example, the medieval Indian architecture, okay, has a lot of green technologies associated with it. Justify or comment or say critically analyze. That's true. Think about it. In the medieval Indian forts or palaces, etc., there is huge ventilation systems. Correct. Natural light is used to its maximum. The wind and all the natural resources are used to its maximum, rather than shutting everything down and using all artificial lamps and all. Using of natural light, using of natural ventilation. All these are used in the medieval Indian buildings. Okay, so how can we connect those buildings with green buildings of modern days? Okay, so you have to think like that. Do not think about these things in a single perspective. Try to connect everything when you study different topics. Okay, you have heard of this so-called multi-pronged approach, correct? So basically it's nothing but being able to connect all these different things together. You have to practice it, only then you would be able to do it. Okay, so a very good answer would include all these perspectives in the answer sheet. So start practicing in that sense. Whenever you find a new topic, try to analyze it in different perspectives. Next one. So continuing with that, in sum, the following aspects of a building design are looked into in an integrated way in a green building design. What are those? Building system designed in a way to efficiently use HVAC, heating, ventilation and air conditioning, lighting, electrical and water heating, integration of renewable energy sources, selection of ecologically sustainable materials and water management, indoor environmental quality. While talking about the rural ecosystem in our previous classes, I have mentioned about the indoor air pollution. So this is another important thing in green buildings. Indoor air pollution is minimized. Okay, in the modern buildings, because we have very limited ventilation, indoor air pollution is very high, both in urban systems as well as in rural systems. In rural systems, it's much higher because of the use of firewood and primitive fuel sources. But in urban systems, we still have indoor air pollution because of poor technologies, because of the poor methods of designing the buildings. Okay, so I have already explained this in the previous classes. Please go through them once again. Green rating for integrated habitat assessment, that is the GRIHA scheme. Griha in Sanskrit means abode. Okay, Griha means home or abode. So this is a project conceived by TERI, the Energy Research Institute of India, and it's jointly developed by Ministry of Renewable Energy and along with TERI. The primary objective of this rating system is to help design green buildings and in turn help evaluate the greenness of these buildings. You can rate these buildings based on how much green they are, say based on say 1 star, 2 star, or say some point are given based on their performance. So Griha is a rating tool basically that helps people to assess the performance of their building against certain nationally acceptable benchmarks. Okay, so if you can have this objective classification or say objective rating, then it would be easier to understand, analyze, and mitigate. Correct? Think about it. If you get say 50 out of 100 in history, then you know where you stand. You know how to improve. You know, say you have that benchmark to improve. Okay, rather than not knowing how much you would score, if you have something to work on, that would put you in perspective. Correct. That is the same ideology here. Griha basically provides that rating using which you can improve upon. Okay, so that is the idea behind Griha. This is basically using this old tag which goes like this: what gets measured gets managed. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. If you can measure it, it will get managed. That's true. Okay, so that is what is being put through this Griha's assessment. So moving on, the appraisal may be revised in 3 years. Okay, Griha appraisals are revised in once in 3 years. Now, Griha rating system consists of 34 criteria categorized under 4 major categories. The 4 major categories are as follows: site selection and site planning, conservation and efficient utilization of resources, building operation and maintenance, and innovation points. These are the 4 major criteria, 4 major categories. Within these categories, there are 34 criteria. 8 of these 34 criteria are mandatory, 4 are partly mandatory, and the rest are optional. Okay, so based on all the ratings and evaluations, different levels of certifications are given. Okay, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, all the way up to 5 stars. Minimum points required for certification is 50. If the building is scoring less than 50, you won't get Griha certification. Minimum points are 50. Okay, moving on. Energy audits on large industrial consumers. This is another program. In large industrial sectors and consumers, from March 2007 onwards, energy audits are undertaken. These are mandatory. Okay, because these are huge consumers of energy. So if you can make their consumption more efficient, and if you can prevent any kind of wastage in these sectors, there is huge potential of saving a lot of energy and diverting the same energy to sectors which are using, say, non-eco-friendly energy sources. Correct. So energy audits for large industrial consumers are one of the major initiatives by the government of India. So these units, which are notified as designated consumers, are also required to employ certified energy managers and report energy consumption and energy conservation data annually. That's also vital. Mass transport. This has been implemented by most of the governments in India. The idea is to promote mass transport systems such as metros, buses, public buses, etc., rather than going for private vehicles. Okay, so the National Urban Transport Policy emphasizes on using these public transport facilities and non-motorized modes over personal vehicles. That is why cycleways, etc., are being constructed in most of the major cities these days. Okay, use bicycle rather than going by a two-way, say, motorbike or a scooter. Or if you are using one of those, at least try use an electric one. Got it. Similarly, constructing of metro, railway projects, etc. Some of the state governments, such as Maharashtra, has announced that they would impose congestion tax to discourage the use of private cars. Okay, cities like Mumbai are congested with vehicles, full of traffic blocks. Correct, Bangalore, Mumbai, all the major cities. So some of the governments have even come up with this idea of using a congestion tax So at least if they are taxed for congestion, people might avoid buying their own vehicles and would be, using the public transport. That is the idea. Okay. Clean air initiatives. In urban areas, one of the major sources of air pollution is emissions from transport vehicles, correct? So how can we avoid this? Introduction of CNG, retiring old and polluting vehicles, strengthening of mass transportation, all the points that you can think of yourself. CNG vehicles are already employed in many areas, especially in and around Delhi and the Agra region. Old vehicles, okay, the ministry has come up with the scrapping policy very recently. How to scrap all the old vehicles, etc., etc. I have taken a class regarding that in one of my current affairs sessions. Please go through that. Regarding the new scrapping policy. Otherwise, please do check it out. There are certain stipulations as far as the age of vehicles are concerned. Okay, then strengthening of mass transportation, metro, public buses, etc., etc. Some of the state governments also provides incentives and subsidies for buying electric vehicles. For thermal power plants, installation of electrostatic precipitators is mandatory. Okay, I hope you remember regarding thermal power plants, they produce a lot of ash, and this fly ash can be, dangerous, or say it can cause a lot of pollution. So how there is a fly ash utilization policy by various states, especially Maharashtra and all. All these have been already taken in the previous classes. That's why I'm not using too much time in this. Promotion of energy saving devices. There are plenty of devices that can actually save a lot of energy. Rather than using your, say, incandescent bulbs, 100 watt, 60 watt things, you can actually go for CFL lamps. Or even better, you can go for LED lamps. Correct. These are energy efficient. They provide much more brighter, light, and they also use only very, very little amount of energy compared to the traditional incandescent bulbs, the yellow bulbs. Okay. Please do look into that. Please do look into how these, especially look into these LED bulbs. LED bulbs are also this star rating, so look into that aspect. So basically, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has introduced the Bachat Lamp Yojana, a program under which the households may exchange the incandescent lamps for CFL lamps. I think you have heard about this. And nowadays, it is not even CFL lamps, it's actually LED lamps. So some states have made it mandatory for the installation of solar water heaters in hospitals, hotels, and large governmental and commercial buildings. Subsidies provided for installation of solar water heaters in residential buildings, etc., etc. Promotion of biofuels. Yes, ethanol blending. You have heard about it, correct? A mandate on ethanol blending of gasoline requires 5% of blending of ethanol with gasoline from 2003 onwards. It has started. It's a long old project. Even now it is being continued. Proportion, etc. has been changed. Okay, please do update it. But understand that it is mandatory that you should blend at an X amount of ethanol with your gasoline for better efficiency. Okay, so ethanol is one of the prime products, and I have in the previous class I have talked about some crops from which ethanol can be produced. I hope you remember using bagasse and all, the residues of sugarcane industry. Okay, molasses, bagasse. I have mentioned all that in the previous lectures. Anyway, Indian Solar Loan Program. What is this? What is Indian Solar Loan Program? You know the Indian Solar Program. What is the loan program? This started in April 2003. The United Nations Environmental Program initiated a 3-year program credit facility to southern India to help rural households finance the purchase of solar home systems. Okay, this was a region-specific program by UNEP focusing on South Indian rural landscapes where they will be provided with the credit for purchasing solar home systems. Canara Bank and Syndicate Bank were roped in along with some other regional rural banks for the loan dispersal and all. And UNEP provides assistance with technical issues, vendor qualification, and other activities to develop the institutional capacity of these types of finance. So this is a financial, say, a loan scheme implemented by an international agency. But such practices can also be implemented within India. In Government of India also provides lots of incentives and say credit schemes as well as subsidy schemes for promoting solar and other clean energy mechanisms. Okay, National Initiative on Climate Resilient Agriculture, or NICRA. Okay, there are only few more slides. Don't worry. Okay, we will end this class very soon. NICRA. So what is NICRA? You have heard about ICAR, right? Indian Council for Agricultural Research. ICAR launched this National Initiative on Climate Resilient Agriculture, NICRA, in 2010-11 period with an outlay of 350 crores in the 11th plan. Nowadays, we do not have this plan. Okay, we have this 5-year plans earlier. Nowadays, we do not have that. But NICRA came as a part of the 11th plan. And this initiative will primarily enhance the resilience of Indian agriculture, covering crops, livestock, fisheries, etc. The project is actually comprised of 4 components: strategic research, technology demonstration on farmers' fields, sponsored and competitive research grants, and capacity building. These are the 4 verticals of NICRA project. Not too much important, but please do have an idea. These are very vague points, so you can write it in your own terms, in your own words. BSc Green X. I think you have heard about this. This was in newspapers a long time back. This was all over the news. Okay, BSc Green X. This was actually the first step in creating a credible market-based response mechanism in India, whereby both businesses and investors can rely upon purely quantitative and objective performance-based signals to assess carbon performance. In the previous class, I mentioned that carbon became a commodity. Correct. Carbon commodity could be exchanged in this multi-stock exchanges. Okay, I had talked to you about that in the previous class. So by this trading in carbon as a commodity, it is possible to exactly quantify the situation. We have some values, or we have some precise statistics based on which we can go. Correct. So that is the advantage of using this BSc Green X. This Green Trade Carbon X Rating Services Private Limited, G-Trade, is a company based in India which has co-developed this BSc Green X Index in close association with Bombay Stock Exchange. BSc Green X Index includes the top 20 companies which are good in terms of carbon emissions, free float market capitalization, and turnover. Okay, these are basically copied from the website. Please check it out. The index is a cap weighted free float market capitalization weighted index comprising the list of BSc 100 index. Okay, I hope you know about the Sensex and Nifty. Okay, or please do look into it. What is Sensex? What is Nifty? What are the companies that comes under Sensex and what are the companies that comes under Nifty? Okay, so this is based on Bombay Stock Exchange or BSc, and NSE, Nifty is based on National Stock Exchange, NSE. All right, there are certain differences in both of these. Please do study about them. The index has been backtested from October 2008 itself as a base date with a base value of 1000. And the index is rebalanced on a biannual basis, that is end of March and September quarters. Okay, twice in a year, the index is being rebalanced according to the changing circumstances. FAME India program, another very famous program. Faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid electric vehicles, that is FAME. This scheme was rolled out again in 2015 by the Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprise and will help in promoting the use of electric and hybrid vehicles. Initially, a subsidy of 30% was provided for buying of these electrical vehicles, and eventually the idea was to replace the fossil fuel based vehicles in a phased manner. Okay, thereby saving a net value of 14,000 crores. The scheme is proposed to be implemented over 6 years till 2020. Right now we have enhanced schemes on this. Please do check it out. We have FAME 2, etc., etc. Again, as I have mentioned earlier, please do download a compilation of government schemes from any of the academy websites and study that. Okay, they have beautiful compilations of all the government schemes. Any academy compilation is fair, and do check it out. Long-term ecological observations, or LTEO. So this is one of the components of climate change action program with an outlay of 40 crores in the 12th plan period. A science plan on LTO was released during the 21st Conference on Parties, that is the Paris Climate Conference in 2015. First phase of the LTO program includes creating a network of field sites to assess the health of 8 different biomes in the country, namely Western Himalayas, Eastern Himalayas, Northwestern Arid Zone, Central Indian Forest, Western Ghats, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Jammu Kashmir, and Sundarbans. So India has these 8 different biomes. So the first step in this LTEO was to assess the health of these different biomes. Okay, and this also aims to understand the biophysical and anthropogenic drivers of ecosystem change in these biomes and their effects on socio-ecological responses. Okay, so this is again an India-specific thing that we have done, the long-term ecological observations. First of all, study these biomes and study what are the different biophysical and anthropological drivers of ecosystem change within these selected biomes. Okay, this is a part of COP21, that is the very famous Paris Climate Conference. National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change, or NAFCC. This was set up as a central sector scheme in 2015-16 to support concrete adaptation activities which mitigate the adverse effects of climate change. Projects related to adaptation in sectors such as agriculture, animal husbandry, water, forestry, tourism, etc. are all eligible under NAFCC. And National Bank for Agricultural and Rural Development, NABARD, is the national implementation entity. Okay, National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change. So all these sectors are eligible under this, to apply for this fund. And NABARD is the national implementation agency of NAFCC. Okay, so with this, we will wind it up today. I know that today's lesson has been very dry and abundantly boring. Okay, and because most of them were, point based. These are government schemes, so they have their aims and objectives and say their mechanisms and features implemented, written as bullet points in the website itself. And most of the points that I have shown to you today are exactly as taken from the website. That's why I read through most of these points myself rather than, summarizing it or anything, because these are the keywords used by the Government of India in their notification. Okay, so please do not skip any of these. These are important topics, however boring it is. Also, I request you to update all the things that I have said with the current affairs. Okay, if you get time, when you get time, please do check the websites so that you can get the most authentic and most updated data. Clear? Also, make sure to read the newspapers. We have plenty of news coming in these kinds of areas every day in the newspapers. Okay, especially regarding the Western Ghats, its fragility, regarding the different projects that are happening in different parts of the country, which are, which could be huge threats to the environment. So please do look into all that, because it will definitely be useful for you in one way or another. Maybe in prelims, maybe in mains, or maybe even in interview. All right. So please do study well, and you can, if you have any doubts or queries, you can always contact me through Instagram or say Facebook personally. The links are given in the description section underneath. It's also provided in the Telegram channel. The channel link is also given here. So before you go, please make sure to like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. And we will meet again tomorrow with another couple of sessions from CSAT and Environment. Until then, bye-bye. Good night.